And welcome to the Daily Devo today for Friday, June the 30th. It's the last day of June already. 6 months are gone. We are headed for Joppa today. The modern name, however, is Joffa. Instead of a double P, Joppa, this is Joffa. So we know it as Joppa. That'll have a familiar ring to it. And they're actually suggesting you read the whole book of Jonah, all 4 chapters of it. It is a story that hard to take in pieces, that's for sure. They do quote Jonah 1:3, but Jonah ran away from the Lord and headed for Tarshish. He went down to Joppa, where he found a ship bound for that port. As soon as you step into the historic quarter of Joffa, the modern name for Joppa, the feel of Israel changes. The frenetic pace of city life slows. Slows as you stroll among the art installations, galleries, and restaurants. If you continue walking among the bobbing boats in the harbor engulfed by the smell of the sea, it's all but certain that the Mediterranean's gentle breeze will summon you to a moment of personal reflection. This was not Jonah's experience, however. You might be surprised to learn that the book of Jonah puts greater emphasis on geography than on its signature great fish. By my count, there are 32 references to location in its modest 47 verses, and the first place mentioned sets the stage for the rest. The Lord called Jonah to preach in Nineveh, the ancient capital of the Assyrian Empire, located within modern Mosul, Iraq. In Jonah's day, Nineveh was huge, covering some 300 acres, and it was mean-spirited. During the late 8th century BC, the armies of Assyria repeatedly assaulted the Promised Land. They were bent on cruel conquest, and Jonah's homeland paid the price again and again. This helps us understand Jonah's response when the Lord called him to preach in Nineveh. He headed for Joppa, a harbor town filled with fishermen and sailors. It's hard to imagine a place more different from Jonah's hometown of Gath Hepher, Hepher, Gath Hepher, which was a farm community tucked high on a mountain ridge. But Joppa offered something Gath Hepher did not: ships that sailed to the western side of the Mediterranean Sea. If Jonah could reach Tarshish, he would be more than 2,300 miles from Nineveh. Geographically, Jonah's response to the Lord's call was a resounding and unmistakable "no way." Jonah charted this course from Joppa because he saw Nineveh differently than the Lord did. Jonah viewed the Assyrian Empire as the dreaded other. And at that particular time in history, the empire was being challenged for a change by a combination of foreign invasion, famine, and earthquake. The last thing Jonah wanted to do was mount an aid campaign of any kind. By contrast, the Lord saw people in Nineveh for what they were: spiritually immature children who needed to know who God was and how he thought about them. And they referenced Jonah 4:11 at that point. Joppa offered Jonah the chance to stop, see things from the Lord's perspective, and reverse course. Unfortunately, he did none of the above. But we can. The Lord gives us places like Joppa too. Places to pause and reflect on our call to mission when we feel like escaping from it. I would assume that we're mostly all pretty familiar with the story of Jonah. His lack of desire to take any kind of good news whatsoever to the people of Nineveh. They were the enemy. They were the horrible people who did horrible things to his people. Cruel things. Jonah did not want to accept that call. Not because he doubted the Lord's faith, but because he was convinced that God would do something good for the Assyrians. And he certainly did not want that either. And I think it's easy to find that kind of attitude in our day and age, where there are certain people, they can be in our own town, or they can be in other countries, where we just don't want anything good to happen to them. But that certainly is not God's perspective on others who, just like ourselves, are created in his image. Two questions this morning or today. Who is your Nineveh? Who is your Nineveh? Who's that one? Who's that people? Who's that them? That off-putting person the Lord is calling you to evangelize. And how do we choose to run away? That'd be part 2 of that question for me. How do we choose to run away from that? Question number 2, where is your Joppa? A place the Lord stopped you for a moment of reflection. A place to defeat your doubts. Interesting to look back over our lives and see that, or even right now, where we are now, who is it the Lord wants us to take the gospel to? Co-worker, family member, neighbor, whoever the Lord just brings by our steps. And what's our response? What excuse? That's our Joppa, an excuse of some kind, right? Don't have time, don't know how. Nah, I don't think so, Lord. Just don't. We have those things in our lives, I'm sure, if we're honest about it. The prayer for today, Lord, when I hear you calling me to mission in places filled with off-putting people, I feel like running the other way. Please stop me at the Joppa seashore to think again. Help me to see the mission before me as you do. Of course, as they said, Jonah did not stop at Joppa. He took the boat. He was going to get away as far away in the other direction as he possibly could go. And yet the Lord had to get kind of rough with him, didn't he? To force him to take that time to think it all through. Don't go that far in running away from the Lord if we know what's good for us. Blessings to you today.